This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include Becki Gray from the John Locke Foundation, syndicated columnist John Hood, Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch, and political consultant Brad Crone. We've got a really interesting show for you this week. We're going to begin by reporting statistics indicating people over 60 are going to outnumber those under 17 real soon. We're going to talk about what impact that might have. We'll preview next year's elections in which we select a president, governor, and U.S. senator, and talk about a possible reprieve on school grading. Let's get started. The North Carolina Division of Aging and Adult Services recently quantified just how our population is changing. Not only is North Carolina ranked 9th in population, but we rank 9th in adults aged 60 to 65. By 2033, we're expecting a 72% increase in 65 and older adults, and by 2018, our 60-year-old population is going to exceed those aged 17 or under. 60 counties currently have more 60 and above compared to 17 and under people, and that number is expected to grow to 90 out of our 100 counties by 2025. What does all this mean? A lot of numbers there, but we're going to see a tremendous increase in the demand for services and for seniors than we currently have. Chris, help us understand the demands this is going to place on North Carolina.
Well, we could do a whole show on this topic, but we talk a lot about Medicaid on this program. The significant part of Medicaid spending, not Medicare, which is the federal government, but a significant part of Medicaid spending is for nursing home care, elderly care for folks above 65 who can't afford to pay for the cost of nursing homes. That's only going to go increase. A big budget item this session is a home and community care block grant, which gives elderly people who are low-income services in their homes. They don't have to be put in institutions. There's already a waiting list. That funding has been cut. You could just go down the list of all the services we're already struggling to keep up now in the state budget with these services. And I don't think we're doing a very good job. This is only going to explode as we head the next 10, 20,
John,
30
one
years.
of the statistics that we read nationally, and we have to assume it's probably true in North Carolina also, is that as these baby boomers are aging, they haven't saved very much so far as retirement is concerned. One of the trends, obviously, is we're going to see these people working longer and longer into their lives.
Yes.
Are they going to be taking jobs that should go to younger people in the workforce?
No, because when you work and you earn income, then you expand the productive capacity of the economy to increase total employment. There are people who disagree, but they need to go take an economics course. Now, more generally, it's important for us to think about the fact that this is all good news. People are living longer than they used to. Not only that, but they're living more healthy, longer lives than they used to. The stress on public services is true on the one end, but on the other end, it reduces the demand for other kinds of public services. So it's not actually clear in the long run, particularly since elderly people, on average, have more money than people who are young. It's not actually clear in the long run this is a negative for the state budget. Might be a negative for the federal budget, but that's a different matter. So I think it's important for us to adjust to these demographic realities, recognize that people are going to be working longer than they were before, but it was foolish to think that the retirement age that made sense a generation or two ago is relevant to today. Back then, the life expectancy wasn't much above the retirement age.
Another aspect of this, Brad, is that the number of people 85 and older increased 40% from 2000 to 2010, and it's projected to get even larger by 2033. But following up on what John was saying, as people do get older, the most expensive time of their lives is healthcare-wise, particularly in their latter years. Their income drops, their health gets worse. What kind of pressures is this going to put on the state of North Carolina so far as Medicaid services, DHHS, and so forth like that?
I think that it puts a lot of pressure on our health care. And, I had a personal situation last year with my mother passing away. She'd been sick for 3 years, and we ran through just a tremendous amount of money for her long-term care. And their families all across North Carolina facing very similar situations. And if you haven't saved any money, the pressure is even greater, Tom. So it truly is a dire situation for most families.
Becki, we understand that in 2011 in North Carolina, 82% of the people over 65 own their own home. As they get older, what kind of demands is this going to put on housing in our state? Any idea?
Well, some people may be downsizing into retirement communities, or as their health deteriorates, perhaps moving into long-term care. So there would be that. But, you know, a couple other things to think about with this. With the increased demand on health care, it's important to think now about measures that could be placed to plan for those kind of things. Things that would reduce the cost of health care. Things like expanding the scope of practice so that we allow nurse practitioners to do perhaps more things that they're qualified to do. All kinds of things within the medical field of breaking down those barriers, expanding the scope of practice. Certificate of need is something else that I know we've talked about before on this show, of breaking down those barriers to competition that would drive down the cost of health care. So now is the time to, and a lot of these issues are before the General Assembly this session, now is the time to really start thinking about
John, this is a destination
costs.
State for retirees coming into North Carolina. Are a lot of these people 60 and over? Are they retiring to urban communities or to like coastal or mountain communities or rural counties? Where are they settling here?
Well, yeah. I mean, the answer to
all
that
of the
question,
above. That was a good question.
Well, there
then.
are some rural areas that aren't attracting as many retirees, but yeah, you've got some retirees who are moving to the urban cores. You've got others, though, that are moving to some of these communities along the coast and the mountains, and even in the Piedmont, in areas that are specializing in these kind of communities. It's an interesting economic opportunity for people to go into.
Yeah.
Uptake, Thomas, is that we're living too darn long, and it's a good time to get in the funeral business.
That's don't tell me that. Peddle that somewhere else. We thank you for watching NC Spin. Our network of stations keeps getting stronger and audiences are growing. We especially want to tell people who live or have vacation properties in the southeastern part of our state to watch NC Spin at our new time on WILM 10 in Wilmington. You can see us each Sunday morning at 8 a.m. And don't forget, you can get more exclusive video and viewpoints each week on our website, ncspin.com, or NC Spin on Facebook, where you'll find balanced debate for the Old North State. When we come back, the triple play election.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
The Legal Workforce Act is a bad idea. Forcing mandatory E-Verify before creating a 21st century guest worker program is bad for agriculture and it's bad for our economy. Wasting crops, closing farms, and importing our food are not acceptable consequences. We expect better. We must solve our current workforce needs first. Tell Congress to fix our broken immigration system the right way.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
Every year, North Carolina patients undergo 635,000 same-day surgeries. 72% of these surgeries are performed in our highest-cost hospital facilities, adding as much as $2,000 to every procedure. The state's outdated Certificate of Need law prevents competition from lower-cost, higher-quality same-day surgery centers, inflating healthcare costs and limiting patient choice. Tell state lawmakers it's time to lower healthcare costs now. It's time to make a simple fix to an outdated law, increasing patient choice and lowering healthcare costs now. You can help. Visit reformconnow.com and tell lawmakers it's time for a simple fix to an outdated law. It's time to lower healthcare costs now.
We now return to NC Spin.
We've talked some about the upcoming election in 2016, even speculated about some of those expected to run. Next year's elections promise to be important because for the first time since 2008, we'll be electing a president, governor, and U.S. senator. Brad, you're a Democratic political consultant. Democrats hadn't fared too well since 2008. Help us frame this upcoming election and tell us what advice you would give Democrats and Republicans.
Well, from a framing standpoint, Tom, I think Democrats are very positive and upbeat, energetic going into the 2016 election cycle. I think they feel like with Roy Cooper on the ticket, it's going to be very competitive. The actions of the Republican legislature are helping fuel some of that energy and excitement. So I think Democrats are upbeat and optimistic as we go into 2016. I would say, though, there are two numbers that you really have to pay attention to as Democrats as we go into the election cycle. It's 18% of self-identified Democrats went into the ballot box the last two election cycles and voted Republican at the state level and at the federal level. Democrats cannot have more than 9% crossover vote. You cannot have 18% of your own party voting Republican. And then 64% is the aggregate average of unaffiliated voters who have voted in 2010, 2012, 2014 for Republicans at the state level and at the federal level. And until Democrats get the Democrats coming home and are able to at least have a push situation with unaffiliated voters, we're going to have a hard time winning an election.
Interesting. All right, so let's talk some more about this presidential election. There are a lot of presidential Republican hopefuls that are beginning to make their way into North Carolina. Any indication about who North Carolinians might favor on the ballot for either Republican or Democrat nominations? Becki?
Well, I mean, we're seeing straw polls that are being done. Yeah, this is the political season, I think, for both parties with county conventions and district conventions and all this. And one of the things they like to do are these straw polls. But all the straw polls I've seen have been all over the place. There's a wide field for the Republican candidates out there. And I think right now people are getting acquainted with those candidates, learning what they like, what they don't like. And I don't see a clear winner yet with that. I think it's still a wide open field. On the Democrat side, it seems like Hillary Clinton's name continues to be mentioned over and over again. Not really seeing, I know, you all could probably speak more to that. But I think the interesting race is going to be the Republican presidential primary.
In North Carolina?
In North Carolina, yes.
Right.
And of course, we still don't know when that primary is going to be.
Yeah, that's
It'll
right.
be interesting. We just don't know when.
Well, we know Barack Obama in 2008 had a big impact on the outcome of our elections. It helped us elect a Democratic U.S. Senator, Democratic governor, and so forth like that. How big an impact do you think the presidential race will have in North Carolina, John, in 2016? Is it going to lead down all the way to the ballot?
I think it will matter. I don't think it will be the same revolutionary sort of a moment that 2008 was. 2008 brought out people who had never voted before, not just young people who couldn't have voted before, but lots of other people who wanted to be part of making history. The argument is, well, the same thing will happen with Hillary Clinton being potentially the first female president. I don't buy it. She's been around too long. It doesn't have the same revolutionary feel to it. I'm not arguing it isn't going to be a competitive presidential race. It certainly will be. And at this moment, Democrats are better off in the presidential cycle than in the midterm cycle. That didn't used to be true. But do I think it's going to determine the governor's race and some of the other races? No, I don't think it will.
Yeah, Chris, Brad mentioned the names for Roy Cooper, for instance, running on the Democratic nomination for governor. It's a foregone conclusion Pat McCrory is going to run for re-election as a Republican. I'm hearing more and more chatter that there might be a Republican challenge in the primaries against him. Are you hearing that? And if so, what names are you hearing?
Well, I mean, there'll be some names filed, but in terms of a big name with legitimate chance, I think it's still very unlikely. I think where the chatter comes from is all the battles between Governor McCrory and the more conservative wing of the party, led by Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger, who would be a formidable opponent and could raise a lot of money. I think at this point it'd be wildly premature to suggest that a serious candidate will challenge McCrory in the primary. That doesn't mean they won't make noise about it as part of the back and forth between the branches of government.
All right, we've seen Roy Cooper toy around with the idea of running for governor before and then come up to the line, and when it came down time to register, decided not to. If Roy Cooper decides next year he's not going to run for the Democratic nomination for governor,
holy smokes!
Who else have we got?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
I mean, seriously, holy smokes! Because I don't think the Democrats have a very far bench as far as the Plan B situation would go. I think Roy's in it. Roy will continue to win. My message to Roy Cooper is get to work. Start working your sheriffs, start working your legislators. He's not making the grassroots, grass top, retail politician calls that he needs to make, and he better get to work.
But now maybe he's following the Mike Easley path. Mike Easley was Attorney General before he ran for governor. Did he really do all that ground level work ahead of time? I don't know.
No, he didn't.
He assumed that he was going to win by appealing over the top of that to the general public through television ads. That was the assumption, and that was the model in 2000.
Mike Easley was very good on television. I haven't been shown yet that Roy Cooper has that same kind of charisma.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think the Democratic Party and the operatives who run the leadership, who run the party, are expecting that type of touch.
All right, we're going to be talking more about this obviously as the year wears on, but it's an interesting, a lot of speculation. Everybody wants to know how well our schools are performing, and we'll talk about that, school grading, after these messages.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Where do you go when you need to know? A&C makes it easy for you to get the information you need to make well-informed public policy decisions. Our members are industry leaders who are ready to share their industry-specific insights with you. Want to hear both sides of the story? A&C members can tell you. Just use the A&C member directory as your guide or call us directly. A&C members have the knowledge, expertise, and perspective you need to create public policies that are good for North Carolina. We are ready for your call.
Medicaid system is not a perfect system. There are things that could be changed, but there's a lot that's going well with the system. Community Care of North Carolina is in place. It's a team of nurses, advisors, caregivers who help us out. We want to call and say, look, I've got Miss So-and-so here. She needs to have her weight checked each day because she's got congestive heart failure. Can you send one of those monitors out to the house and keep an eye on this and let me know if her weight goes up too much, because if it does, she's retaining fluid and she's going to be back in the hospital. We work together with them. That's a great system. It saves a lot of money. It's proven to work. We're not opposed to changing the things that need to be changed, but let's not throw out everything that we worked for the past 15 to 20 years.
North Carolina's Family Physicians supports Medicaid reform that builds on our state's foundation of medical homes. OurNCHealthcare.com.
Does your North Carolina business or organization have a story to tell? I'm Richard Campbell, and at Carolina Broadcasting and Publishing, we help tell stories that connect you to the people who will respond. We take the time to understand our clients' needs and what makes them unique. We craft their stories through the efficient use of words, images, and videos that resonate with their desired audience. We also know that a good story is incomplete without a call to action. On video, on air, online, and in print, from concept to final production, no one can help tell your story more effectively or affordably than we can. For special introductory offers, visit carolinabroadcasting.com or call 919-832-1416. Again, that's carolinabroadcasting.com. Let us help tell your story today.
We now return to NC Spin.
Everyone wants to know how well our schools are performing, and earlier this year we released letter grades for each school. Few were pleased with the grades. 80% of each school's grade was based on student passing grades. 20% was based on student growth. Many think that formula needs adjustment. Grades, however, were based on a 15-point scale, due to be changed this year to a 10-point scale, which many predicted would mean even more schools fell into the D and F grade category. Legislation in both the House and the Senate would delay that 10-point scale for 2 years. Becki Gray, some say this is being done to avoid having so many failing schools. Supporters say it's just going to give us time to evaluate these grades. What do you think of this proposed legislation?
Well, I think the most important thing that they need to do is to be consistent, to pick a system and stay with it. You know, trying to put some sort of measure on schools is not a new idea. It's been done, but it's sort of nebulous terms that have been used: low-performing schools, high-performing schools. Parents, teachers, everybody knows what an A to F grade grading system means. So I think the first thing they need to do is they need to be consistent with it. And whether it's a 10-point scale or whether it's a 15-point scale, I don't know that it really matters as long as it's the same and everybody understands what that is.
Well, but you typically know an A means what, 90 to 100? 90. Yeah.
Well, you know, 100 to 85, that's one of the proposals that's out there. But instead of changing this every year, and that's kind of consistently what we've seen with this and test scores, that, you know, our kids don't do so well, so we change the goalpost, if you will. And of course everybody's confused by that, and we still don't really know how our students do. So what this conversation is really about is providing a standard and a stable standard that is consistent over a number of years, so that we know how our kids are doing, not just in 1 year, but how they're doing year to year to year.
Brad Skip Stam, who's the House Majority Leader, says we should have 2 different grades for each school, one that's based on performance and one based on improvement. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think there may be some merit to that. But again, I go back to what Becki just said. I think they need to set a standard, and they need to stick to it. The wishy-washiness of a 7-point, 10-point scale and going back and forth, it really does create a whole lot of confusion. Set the standard, say you're going to do the standard for a 7-year period, and then see what your results are periodically, halfway through, and at the end of it.
Chris, I don't know whether you were in the committee meeting or not, but somebody raised a question about whether they were going to change the evaluation process from 80-20 to 50-50 or whatever like that. The answer to that was that both the House and the Senate leadership had agreed that they were going to wait and review that formula after the 3 years period is up.
I think I don't disagree we need stability, but it's ridiculous that we have a formula which only gives you 20% growth. As we've said on the show before, and I've said on the show before, 97% of the schools that received a D or an F, 97% have more than half of their kids on free and reduced lunch. So one of the things that it shows us is where the poor schools are. And I think Representative Horn was on a panel that televised that he agreed it ought to at least be 50-50. I think that's the least we could do. There's a proposal to flip it and make it 20% achievement, 80% growth. We got to do something about it. Otherwise, as the people in Virginia, the Republican legislature in Virginia repealed this because a Republican state senator said it's just stigmatizing poor schools.
So, John, what's going to happen here?
Well, I would hope they would that they would change it and then leave it alone, because I think it deserves to be changed. I like the 2-grade idea. I think that's the best solution, and then leave it alone for several years. But I know the legislators
are Becki's right.
reticent.
We don't have a lot of...
They're reticent to do anything right now. They'd rather stick with the system.
And we'd rather change than fight or something. I don't know. Well, after these messages, we're going to ask the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Hi, I'm Linda Loveland. I want the best for my kids. Feeding them foods they like within my budget is a priority. But what do we really know about these foods? North Carolina farmers and food experts give you a website to find it all. FeedTheDialogueNC.com, a place where moms like you and me can learn more about the foods we eat and the farmers that feed us. Check it out. Add your input and help feed the dialogue. Let's talk food at FeedTheDialogueNC.com.
Nobody ever imagined a mammogram machine being subject to CON law. If I want to invest our business dollars into technology that I think is going to benefit my patients, my customers, we should be able to do that. I think it's time to take a law that was intended to protect the citizens of North Carolina and now is harming them and change it. I'm Dr. Bruce Schroeder, and I support CON reform.
Visit reformconnow.com.
I was asked by someone months ago, isn't Medicaid in North Carolina broken? And my answer was no. There are parts of it that need to be improved. There are parts that need to be changed. But the whole system's not broken. There are a lot of things that are working very well. What is working well is that we have a physician-led, physician-guided team effort. It's built on the concept of physicians having medical homes, patients having medical homes. And that system that we've created in North Carolina has done wonderful work. It has saved money, it's improved quality, and we have data that demonstrates that. That's what we need to retain, that's what we need to build upon. We don't need to replace that.
North Carolina's Family Physicians supports Medicaid reform that builds on our state's foundation of medical homes. OurNCHealthcare.com.
We now return to NC Spin.
When people see me on the streets, they always say, man, I like your show, but I particularly like that last segment where you ask the panel to tell you something you don't know. John Hood, I'm going to start with you.
Well, actually at the beginning of the fiscal year, we had a couple of reports come out from the State Controller's Office about revenue collections, and they were below expectations. There's some fairly silly people made some fairly silly allegations about what this meant, extrapolating out of 1 or 2 month data what an annual trend would be when they should have known better, because they were claiming we're going to have $1 billion deficit, we're going to have this and that and the other. What it actually comes right down to it, I'm not exactly sure what will end up at the end of the fiscal year. It might be a very small number, well below 100 million. It might be a little bit more, but it's going to be a fairly small, it's going to be lower than the average revenue forecast mistake. In other words, every year your revenues come in a little bit higher or lower than forecast. The 2014-15 fiscal year forecast proved to be more accurate than usual, and maybe people will learn not to jump to conclusions based on 1 or 2 months of data.
Becki Gray, tell us something we don't know.
Well, Tom, it seems like every day as taxpayers, we're being asked to give up more and more, and we've got a long line at the state line, if you will, of, whether it's an auto manufacturer, or whether it's Spirit Air, or whether it's Google, the movie industry, the historic people, asking for more, asking for more, asking for more. So for a bit of good news, the Patton family has given to the people of North Carolina 100 works of art worth $25 million that they have gifted to the state of North Carolina. So do yourself a favor, go out to the North Carolina Museum of Art, see this gift that we have been given, and feel it's a feel-good story. The feel-good story of the day.
Minute left. Brad, tell us something we don't know.
Well, Tom, getting back to the elections, the Democratic Party has a good, solid bench coming up, and that includes Senator Jeff Jackson, Representative Brian Turner from Asheville, Joel Ford from Charlotte, Erica Smith Ingram. So the future is bright for Democrats.
30 seconds, Chris.
One of the strangest bills introduced in a while, Senator Ralph Heiss, who's a powerful chair of Health and Human Services and an authority on a lot of issues, has introduced a bill for a constitutional convention to have a constitutional amendment to allow the state of North Carolina to basically refuse federal laws if 60% of the legislature agrees with it. It's sort of a nullification amendment of the Constitution, which seems outrageous and used to be laughed out. Now it's taken seriously in the legislature.
60%
of the General Assembly, if they voted, 60% of the General Assembly
don't agree with it, we don't have to follow the law.
That's right. 1960.
Well, there you go.
Work out, so.
Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback and read our weekly column. Be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. We hope you'll join us next week when we'll take on more issues of interest to the people of North Carolina. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.